Hello and welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be talking about not this possible winter storm Flynn, but a possible nor'easter, as well as providing your forecast in depth at the end of this video. The timestamps are in the description, and you can see the chapters in your time bar on the bottom if you're watching this video on YouTube, of course. So let's jump right on into it with the National Weather Service page. We have plenty of winter weather advisories, winter storm watches, just a few winter storm warnings. Those are in association with a storm pushing onto the coast of the Pacific Northwest, this possible winter storm Flynn in the Midwest. So that is what all those are about, and that's about it. Maybe a few other minor alerts here, but that's about the gist with the winter weather. So let's move on here to the topic of the day. So we have here the GFS. I'm going to go to forecast loop. Alright, so we're going to go through this, click through, and we're going to talk about those two systems here. More specifically, the second one that we're going to be talking about. So low pressure strengthens a little bit. Alright, so you can see kind of keeping Milwaukee and Chicago out of the equation. If that happens, I would say that this won't get named. But now we have this next system here. It rides along the southern coast. This one tries to form but doesn't. Alright, next system starts rolling up the coast, and you can see that the I-95 corridor gets in on this storm. This one isn't as strong, and earlier model runs of the GFS showed this to be much stronger, but still some snow for the northeast corridor, and then, you know, you get a few rainstorms after that. Let's move on to the Euro here. First I want to look at the snow depth, which is right here. So, from that storm system, you can see that the northeast gets a pretty decent, let's see, right, where is it? I think it's right there. Okay. So the northeast gets a pretty good, 1 to 3 inches, maybe 4 or 5, but not much. So let's move back over to surface precipitation and move on to the European model. So let's look at the European model. European model showing this a little bit stronger and a little bit further south. Locks in a little bit of that Milwaukee and Chicago area. But once again, I don't think that this will get named unless you have Chicago and Milwaukee in there. Now you have this next system, which brings some snow to areas of Texas and Oklahoma, but fails to form into a nor'easter there. Then you have the next system. This one seems much stronger, and it definitely is getting into those 900s. Now, the European model has this becoming a major snowstorm here in the northeast, and if we go to snow depth here, we can see. Alright, let's move on here. Alright, there it is. You can see huge nor'easter. Look at that. So, areas in North Carolina getting 4 to 5 inches. Areas in DC probably getting 1 inch. Let's actually zoom in here a little bit more local here. Let's go to the Northeast Regional Forecast. Alright. So, we move on to that storm system. Boom. Okay. So, DC probably getting 1 to 2 inches. Philadelphia, you're right on the line here, as you usually are. When these storms come rolling up the coast this way, kind of Philly is a big wild card. So you have 1 to 3 on one side, then you get straight to 8 inches on the other side of the Delaware River. Now, New York showing about 8 to 12 inches. Southern Connecticut, 8 to 12 inches. Northern Connecticut. So, here's the target area here. You have Boston in that target area, probably getting 8 to 12 inches, probably more on that higher end. But you have this main target area here from Albany and through the Appalachians of Pennsylvania, probably just the east of them too, getting like these 20-inch snow totals. I don't think this is going to happen. I think that maybe 12 to 15 is a lot more reasonable here. Like, this is 22 inches. That's a little far-fetched for this early in the year, but it could still happen. We're plenty of time out. This would be Wednesday, so we have plenty of time, and this could still definitely happen. You can see one major difference here is that the interior of New England and the Northeast kind of gets shut out of this system, and that's what usually happens when you have something that rises the coast and has maybe a little bit of dry air problems. But you have 3 tracks of snowstorms. One that impacts the interior Northeast, one that impacts the Goldilocks, which is what this is showing, and one that kind of moves out to sea, which is what the GFS was showing. But that is about it for this topic of the day. What do you think about this nor'easter? Do you think it's going to happen? What do you think? This is a little too far-fetched right now. Let me know in the comments. Alright, let's move on to your forecast in depth. So, welcome back to your forecast in depth. So, today we're going to be kind of focusing on this next system here, as we are within 60 hours now. So, let's get started here. We have that low pressure here, some moisture getting pulled up from the Gulf. You have that snowfall starting here. Not much heavy snowfall, maybe a little bit in Wisconsin, but this low pressure is still pretty weak. Now you start to get some banding in Iowa there, but really kind of keeping it pretty weak until it gets into Illinois, Indiana, and Michigan. Then it strengthens a little bit, and you can see some snow in Maine too. But overall, this will be a snowmaker, it'll be a soaker, and then the next system here starts to dump snow on areas of the Great Plains. Now, in terms of total positive snow depth change, we're seeing a consistent here 3 to 5 inches from Nebraska through into Michigan. Now, notably, Milwaukee and Chicago are kept out of this. Chicago, you'll be lucky to see any type of wintry precipitation. Milwaukee might get an inch or 2. So, let's move on here to total accumulated precipitation, because this thing will be dropping a lot of precipitation here. So, a lot of rain in this kind of T-shape here from Nebraska to southern Canada, and from Louisiana into Michigan, kind of this T. So that is about it for the actual rain and the precipitation types. So let's move on here to temperatures. So here are your low temperatures for the day. You can see Northeast kind of warming up compared to yesterday, mostly 20s and 30s. The northern plains staying in the 20s and low 30s. Then you have this area from Texas and up into the Great Lakes region, staying in those 30s and 40s, kind of the same with some parts of the southeast coastline. Now, southern Florida, Texas, Louisiana, maybe even into Arkansas could see those high 50s, low 60s. Everywhere else kind of staying in those high 40s to low 50s here in the Dixie Alley, as well as parts of the Ozarks there. But that's about it. So let's move on here to your high temperatures for the day, which is right about there. So 60s across all the southeast and parts of the Great Lakes regions, 40s and 50s in the northeast, maybe a few areas staying below freezing all day. The northern plains, the very northern plains, staying below freezing all day, and most of the other central plains here and parts of the western Great Lakes region staying in those 30s and 40s throughout the whole day. So let's move on to the west. Alright, the west. So we have this next system moving on here, bringing a bunch of snow into areas here of Washington, Oregon, and California, as well as being a pretty good soaker here too. Next system moving on there as well. So just rounds and rounds of snow and rainfall for the west coast. Total positive snow depth change, you can see plenty of areas that could get a foot of snow, but pretty consistent, 1 to 3 or 3 to 5. Total accumulated precipitation, you can see the west coast gets absolutely soaked, at least a half an inch across most of this area, from the Seattle area down to the San Francisco area. Most inland areas might get a little bit less from this storm, staying below a half an inch, but some higher elevations will do pretty good from this system. So let's move on here to your temperatures. Low temperatures in the Rockies staying below freezing here. The West Coast kind of staying in the 30s and 40s as well. So a pretty cold day here across the West to start. But things quickly warm up a little bit. The West Coast staying in the 40s and 50s. The Rockies staying in the 20s and 30s throughout the day. Some areas could see 60 in the desert Southwest. But that's about it. So that's all I have for today. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next time.